Welcome, friends. I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness, and welcome to our Sunrise Yin stress sequence. What I think you'll need to enjoy and to get the most out of your practice are a yoga mat, or if you've got a carpeted area for today's purposes, that also works fine. One or two blankets, a yoga bolster. If you don't have a bolster, like a couch cushion makes a really nice surrogate for that. And one, or better yet, two yoga blocks. So pause your recording, roll out your mat, gather up your props, and then when you're ready, press play, and I'll meet you on your mat for Sunrise Yin. All right, friends, we're going to get started with a bit of a meditation. So find a seated position with a long spine. So for me, that means propping a bolster up under my seat to keep my pelvis rocking forward, right? You may or may not need that, but know that you can do that at any time. And then press into your seat, grow out of your heart and the crown of your head for the stars. On your next exhale, maintain that length of your spine, but let all your soft tissues fall down toward the earth. If it feels safe and comfortable for you, close down your eyes. But if that doesn't feel safe or you're not inclined to do it, leave your eyes open. But if you can, leave them open with a soft gaze. So maybe find a point 6 to 12 feet in front of you to settle your tension there and see if you can unfocus your eyes, but with a wide periphery. You're taking in the whole room. In this meditation, I'm going to ask you to trace an imaginary line of energy. And that line will start at your upper lip. And I will ask you to follow this course of energy that I described in tandem with your breath. So we'll start with empty lungs. Exhale out all your breath. And then starting from the upper lip, on an inhale, trace that line up through the center of your forehead, over the crown of your head, down the back of your head, all the way down your spinal column. And when that line of energy starts to come up around the pelvic floor, exhale. Feel that breath come up through the pelvic bone, past the belly button, through the sternum, past the heart, up through the throat, to the upper lip. Inhale, up over the top of the head, down the back of the head, down along the whole back line of the body. And then as it comes up around the tailbone and starts to circle up around the pelvic floor, exhale. Back to the upper lip. Inhale. Up the head, down the back line of the body. Exhale. Up the front line of your body. As you trace that line of energy, you might even visualize that you're zipping a jacket. And continue following this imaginary line of energy with your breath. And anytime your thoughts start to creep in, first of all, it's okay. You're not doing it wrong. Notice that with curiosity and kindness. Maybe gently label that with your mind, thinking. Allow the thoughts to float away as you draw your attention back to what's the most provocative sensation with your breath. Use that as your anchor point, and then come back to tracing this line of energy with your breath. Inhaling as that line of energy falls down the back line of your body. Exhaling as that line of energy draws up the front plane of your body. If you're lost in the dream, bring yourself back and resume tracing that line of energy in tandem with your breath. And it might be useful. You don't have to do anything with this information at all. I just want you to notice, does this line of energy, does it have a color? If so, what is the color of that line of energy? Does it have a brightness or a dullness? Is it thick? Is it really, really thick? Or is it razor thin? There's no right answers to this, friends. And again, you don't have to do anything with that information. It's just skillful for you to notice that. All right, friends, if your eyes are closed, gently blink them open. The next time that line of energy reaches your upper lip, you can cease tracing that line of energy with your breath, unless that's serving you, in which case continue. But we're going to shift into our first proper yin shape of the practice, and that shape will be reclining butterfly. So come down onto your back. Use good body mechanics as you come down. For me, that's going to look like a bend in the knees, hands under my thighs, lowering myself down. And then bring the soles of your feet together. Rest the pinky edge blades of your feet down on your mat. Let gravity draw your knees down toward the earth. And if you don't have a provocative reason for not placing blocks under your knees or your thighs, I would really encourage you to do so. And then your hands, anything you like. They can be out at the side, they can be over your head. You could have one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart, or maybe both hands on your heart. While you're here, maybe check in with the organism of your body and just ask, what is it that you need today? How can I better help you to meet your needs? So in these yin shapes, we're looking for sensation. I want you to feel something. And what we want, what we're looking for sensation is a threshold between discomfort and pain. So if you visualize a scale from 0 to 10, where at 0 you felt nothing and 10 would be excruciating, you'd be compelled to move. Choose at least a 4, no more than a 6. In almost every shape, I'll offer you an opportunity to go a little bit deeper if you choose. Not every shape today, but almost every one. So I'll ask you this question and just ask you to consider this. This is my teacher Annie's stress sequence. When you hear the word stress, what is your visceral physical response to that word? Just the word. All right, we're going to begin the process of transitioning to our next shape. So starting with the legs, take your hands on the outside of your thighs, draw your knees together, roll off onto either side, and then press yourself up onto your seat. We're going to shift into caterpillar pose. Now for me, I'm going to place a block under my seat and then lengthen and extend the legs long. Now in a vinyasa formatted class, what I might ask you to do, flex all 10 toes back towards your face, press the back of your knees down into the mat. Don't worry about that here. This is not a vinyasa practice, right? So your toes and your feet can be a little bit loosey-goosey. You could place a bolster under your knees, but lengthen through your spine first, and then walk your hands forward. And then if you'd like to release your chin in towards your chest, please feel free to do so. Now, if you'd like some support for your head or your neck, a couple of options. Elbows on your thighs, or if you're not using the bolster on your knees, you might choose to use it on top of your thighs, elbows on the bolster. Place your thumbs on the inside upper eye socket of both eyes. This is urinary bladder 2 acupressure point. Right. The thing about this urinary bladder 2 point, my experience is it feels really, really good for a minute or two. And when it stops feeling good, it feels really not good. Really not good. So know that you are empowered to change that. So one other option with lots of support, I don't know what this is called. I call it the Macaulay Culkin. If you bring the heels of your hands together, hands on either side of your face, and just rest the weight of your head and face, maybe your neck, into your hands. So what is your body's physical response to just the word stress? So stress is one of those things in our modern fast-paced society. It comes up for people all the time, and it has like certain kinds of stress, certain species of stress have a significant impact on our health. It's not in our favor. So I think like let's acknowledge first that what we experience as stress in our lives today is not it's not the same thing that people experienced 50 years ago. We have some technology that's created expectations that I think has changed the nature of human life in developed countries for sure. So, for example, 50 years ago, if you took a vacation and you took your kids camping at a national park or on a beach vacation in Florida, right? There's no way for your employer to reach you. Whereas today we have email, we have cell phones with text messages, we have all this technology, and like everything in our society is skewed toward immediate. So we have um, carry out food from restaurants and delivery. Everybody can get delivery almost everywhere they live now. We have ATM machines. I was going to say fax machines, but even that's really it's pretty obsolete, right? It's a little slow now for our standards for today. But it's put us in a position where it feels like there are all these pressures and all these stimuli and all these demands. And sometimes we develop pretty unreasonable expectations of ourselves. So if you feel stressed in your life, the first thing that I would like you to think about, this is my opinion, friend, but weigh it out and just feel for if this feels true for you in your life. Right? It's a higher level of stress for most of us than what our ancestors faced, or maybe a very, very different kind of stress. Right? So you feeling stressed doesn't make you wrong.
Check in with your body. Notice your current level of sensation. If you're in that 4 to 6 still, that's fine. You're exactly where you need to be. No need to change anything. But if you've opened up some space, you can lower your heart and your forehead closer down into the earth. Even tucking your chin in towards your chest more will light up the connective tissues on the back line of your body. The word stress itself is intended as is fairly neutral, right? So basically, the way that I understand stress is when there's something in our environment that's putting some pressure on us that has an impact on the nervous system, right? That's what I would consider to be stress. And we tend to think of stress as all bad, like any kind of stress is negative. And I'm convinced that this is not true, right? We couldn't really exist well without some level of stress. So positive stress, so some kind of stimulus in the environment that puts some pressure on us that has an impact on the nervous system that we would consider to be positive, we can call that eustress, eustress, eustress. So some examples of that, right? This is a little bit of a tired metaphor, but if you think about the metaphor of the caterpillar in the cocoon and the person that sees the caterpillar struggling to get out of the cocoon and tries to show mercy to the caterpillar by helping to liberate the caterpillar, but then the caterpillar doesn't have the strength in her or his wings to fly that they would have gotten from this natural process of having some eustress, some positive stress on them, which forces them to strengthen the wings in such a way that when they exit the cocoon, they can fly. All right, friends, start to walk your hands up. Lift yourself up out of the shape. And our next pose is going to be shoelace pose. But one option, let me show you a modification first. This is going to be a better fit for some bodies, right? One is not more advanced than others, friends. This is just different levels of sensation. So the alternate is square pose. So for square pose, take, say, your right shin parallel to the top edge of your mat. Hook the pinky edge blade of your left foot on the outside of your right thigh. And then let gravity, or maybe a little bit of support from your hand and forearm, or even the slight weight of a block, to allow that left knee to lower down toward the right. Right, so you're going to experience probably quite a bit of variation in mobility between hips. That's if that happens. That's really, really common. The other thing is look at this big gap. This is my prosthetic hip, right? So it always starts this way. I think what you'll experience is over time, it doesn't take long to start to close the gap. So if I stayed here for say 5 minutes, by 5 minutes, even with a prosthetic hip, that left knee would be down by my right ankle. So that's the modification. The pose itself, I'm going to turn to the side to demonstrate, but set up almost like you were going to do a sleeping swan or a pigeon. So right knee in the center of your mat, right heel, right shin skewed over to your left. Place a block under your seat for now. And then take that left leg forward, wrap your left knee over your right. Come onto hands and knees. So right now, both knees are on the earth, both hands are on the earth. Widen your feet out a little bit. So right foot further out to the left foot further out to the right. Start to lower your seat down onto a block. Ooh, and that's a fairly high level of sensation for me. Right, so if it's high, if you're in that range, say 6, or maybe even pushing into 7, maintain an erect spine. Settle into your breath. If your body wants more sensation, not my experience in this shape, you can start to find a forward fold over your thighs. Right, so other examples of eustress. So in my life, if I have goals and I haven't made a commitment to anyone and I haven't committed to a timeline in my calendar, they're probably not going to happen. Right? Without that eustress, without having a little bit of pressure put on me, I'm probably not going to produce that result. Whereas if I make a commitment to someone, an accountability buddy, or my community, Transformation Nation or Next Level Human, or I put a deadline in my calendar, that pressure works really well. I respond really well to that. And typically, what I find with it is it's not overwhelming either. Right? I have to do this skillfully, and I need to be careful and not overcommit. But making those kind of commitments for me is a really positive way of expressing stress in the world. It helps me work toward my potential. The outcome at the end of that, I would call to be positive. I would describe as positive. So that's eustress. Now contrast this with distress. DISTRESS. Right? And in the context of this conversation, we can define distress as a stimulus that has an impact on our nervous system that we would consider to be negative. And I'll wait until we go over to the other side before I describe that in more detail. So we're going to start to shift out of this pose. So if you chose square pose, just change over to the other side. Left shin on the front, right shin on top. The other thing I should say about square, you want that bottom heel is going to want to scoot in towards your bottom, towards your seat. Keep pressing it out. When you look between your legs, I'd like you to see a triangle shape. If you're in shoelace pose, rock forward, unwind your knees. Now already my left knee's at the center of my mat, left shin is skewed over to my right. Wrap your right knee over your left, maybe a block under the seat, sit back. The other thing I should have mentioned, you can take a forward fold, but for some bodies, this block under your seat may impede getting the kind of sensation you want. That's okay. You can remove the block, sit directly on the earth. If I remove the block on my scale from 0 to 10, I'd be at a 10 for sure, right? So for me, I'm going to keep the block. I'm at about a 7 right now. Outside of our target range, but it's okay for me in this context. So examples of distress, a health crisis of ourselves or a loved one, a significant change in relationship status. So like eustress with a change in relationship status might be that we're getting married, right? Distress might be a divorce or a separation or something difficult like that. Death in the family, distress. But also chronically being overloaded at work, having unreasonable expectations of ourselves, and enabling other people to have unreasonable expectations of us. I would call all of these distress. So the issue with stress is it activates the sympathetic nervous system. So in the nervous system, the central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal column. And then there are two divisions that you can break the nervous system down from there. One is sensory, right? So this is our sense organs transmitting, communicating back to the brain what they're experiencing in the world. And the other is the motor division, which is the brain responding to the sensory input it's getting and giving commands to the body, giving instructions to the body. And then even within the motor division, we can break this down into a couple different divisions. One is the somatic motor system, right? So this is conscious moving of the body. And the other is the autonomic nervous system, which is largely unconscious, right? And that's what I want to talk about. When it comes to stress, there are two divisions again in the autonomic nervous system. One is sympathetic nervous system. This is our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn nervous system. Right? So when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, as is the case of any kind of stress, what we see are vasoconstriction. So the blood vessels get smaller, the heart rate increases, body temperature can increase, blood pressure increases. The body is flooded with stress-related hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine. So the other thing that happens with the sympathetic nervous system response is blood is taken away from non-critical areas of the body, like say, for example, the digestive system, and it's shunted into the brain, the heart, the lungs, the large muscles. So the things that we would need to flee a dangerous situation or to fight to defend ourselves. All right, friends, we're going to come out of this shoelace pose. So start to shift forward. Unwind your legs. Now we're going to sit back into a child's pose. Take your knees out nice and wide. Full mount width apart or wider is just fine. Bring your big toes together to touch behind you. Press the shoelace parts of your feet into the earth. Start to lower your seat down towards your heels as you reach your arms up over your head. Right now, there are ways we could be really engaged in a child's pose, but that's not particularly what I'm looking for. I'd like you to find more of a resting shape. All right, friends, start to shift yourself forward into a tabletop shape. Floating your hips over your knees, floating your shoulders over your hands. We're going to go into Anahatanasana, puppy dog pose. Might be useful to have both your bolster and a block close by. And then take your hands forward and wide. Turn the fingers to the outside. Goal is, I'd like your hips floating over your knees. Now, they may come forward a little bit. They may shift back a little bit. That's okay. The goal is over the knees. And then lower your heart and your forehead down toward the earth. Right? So again, I want you to feel something, but what I'm looking for you here is not pain. In particular here in this shape, check out the very tops of your shoulders. And if you're getting a pinching sensation, even if it's at a level of a 6, I would lift your heart up more, maybe placing a bolster under your heart. And then if you're good with the sensation without the bolster, just maintain here without the bolster. And I'll give you an option to add sensation here shortly. So all those sympathetic nervous system activation impacts and results in the body are really good short term if we're in a life-threatening situation that we have to run away from or fight our way out of. So the way I think about this for our ancestors, like under assault by a saber-toothed tiger, I don't need the blood in my digestive system. I need it in my lungs, my brain, and my large muscles. But part of the trick is this. The autonomic nervous system, it can't distinguish between I'm under assault by a saber-toothed tiger or I'm I'm overloaded at work chronically every day, or I just said something dumb to a friend that I'm afraid was dismissive and hurt her feelings, and I'm not sure how she's feeling about this. Right? The autonomic nervous system can't tell the difference, so it responds to everything as stress. So for our ancestors, like the way that our nervous system was designed, we're in that stressful situation with a saber-toothed tiger. We escape or we kill the saber-toothed tiger. The stressor is now gone. We can probably process the stress safely at this point.
right? But sometimes I mentioned the nature of the lives and the experience that we're living today. Sometimes we're under sympathetic nervous system activation most of the time. So I'd like you to think about those same impacts, the physiological impacts of sympathetic nervous system activation. And when we looked at these as short term, as survival mechanisms to get ourselves through difficult circumstances, they're really helpful. But long term, when we're in chronic sympathetic nervous system activation, they're really dangerous for our health. They're dangerous for our immune system. They're dangerous for our circulatory system. And also, sympathetic nervous system activation is inherently inflammatory. So you think about all the boogeyman ways that people in our society get sick today: obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, coronary heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease. The common factor for all of these, or one of the common factors, is chronic systemic inflammation.
Right, friends. If your body wants more sensation, one option is take blocks, place the blocks under your hands, and depending on whether you set them at the lowest height,
The medium height, or the highest height, that will give you a lot more lift from which your heart can descend down toward the earth. That really accentuates that pinching sensation in my shoulders. I'm not going to maintain that, but it's one option. Right. So when we're in sympathetic nervous system activation, I think we can agree that's not where we want to be most of the time. Right. That's where we want to be if we're about to be in a car accident, a car almost hit us, or someone tries to mug us in a parking lot. But that's not where we want to be chronically and all the time. So we get into our next shape, I'll talk about where we want to be, and then later in the practice, how we can get ourselves there. All right, friends, we're going to shift out of this shape. So the most gentle way I found to come out of this, if your bolster's under your heart, just leave it right there. But if you have blocks under your hands, slide the blocks out of the way. Rock the crown of your head forward toward the top edge of your mat until your hips come forward. You can bring your legs together behind you, and then hands under your shoulders. Press yourself up onto your knees, grab two blocks, and we're going to go into camel pose. So you don't have to use blocks, and you can. But for me, one block in between the inner thighs, as close to the pubic bone as I can get it. Tuck your toes under your feet. Place a second block at the highest height in between your ankles at the medium height. Now, stack your joints. Float your head over your shoulders, over your hips, over your knees. Place your hands as if you were placing them in the back pocket of denim jeans. Tweeze your elbows together behind you. Start pressing your hips forward toward the top edge of your mat, and visualize a string tied to your heart, lifting your heart up toward the heavens. Keep pressing the hips forward. Keep lifting out of the heart. If it's okay for your neck, it's not for mine. You can drop the crown of your head back behind you. And as long as you can continue pressing your hips forward, you can reach your hands back for one or both heels. Right? I'm not going to choose to do that, but those are options, friends. So if your neck is tweaky as mine is, either a long neck or even chin tucked into your chest, either one of those is okay. Right, so we've been talking about sympathetic nervous system activation and its role with stress. So now I'd like to talk about the other division of the autonomic nervous system. This is the parasympathetic nervous system. This is our the rest and digest division of our nervous system. So in the circumstance of parasympathetic nervous system activation, what we see are often opposite effects. So it's vasodilating, right? So the blood vessels dilate, which means we have a reduction of heart rate. We have a reduction in blood pressure, sometimes a reduction in bodily temperature. All right, friends. If your hands are down on your heels, bring them back up to your seat. Bring your hips back in line so the joints are stacked again. And then rock forward into a tabletop shape. And just as a reset, we're going to do some cat rolling. So index fingers at 12 o'clock, flatten your palms out on the mat. Nice long shape of your spine. On an inhale, drop your belly down toward the earth. Lift your chin. Drag the heels of your hands back toward your knees. Exhale, press into your hands, press into your shins, round through your shoulders. Keep flowing through this at the cadence and pace of your own breath. Right, so parasympathetic nervous system activation also redistributes the blood, and it shifts more blood back into the areas that you need to digest and process food. It also starts the activation of some fluids in our body that tend to shut down during sympathetic nervous system activation. So saliva and bile start to flow, fluids that we need to be able to digest. And this is what we need to relax. Right? So one part of the parasympathetic nervous system is the 10th cranial nerve. It's called the vagus nerve. And it starts in the brain, obviously, as a cranial nerve, but it wanders all throughout the face, the neck, the ears, down into the chest, the abdomen, and the intestines down into the gut. It is so large that actually vagus, I understand, is Latin for wandering. It wanders throughout the body. And when something activates the vagus nerve, it helps to trigger a parasympathetic nervous system activation. Right, so this is good news for us if we're in chronic sympathetic nervous system activation. All right, friends, finish up the round of cat rolling that you're working on right now. And then make your way onto your back, grab a block. Use good body mechanics during these transitions. We can get a little loosey-goosey here, and sometimes that will lead to an injury. All right, set up as if we're going to bridge. So generous bend in the knees, soles of your feet on the earth. Press down into your seat, lift your thighs and hips, and then lift the weight of your body lower back down onto your block. And then find child's pose, happy baby. Soles of your feet parallel to the ceiling. If you visualize a line from the heavens through each heel, it will come down and bisect the knees. And some kind of action of the arms drawing the knees down toward the earth to open the hips. So that could happen with hands on the backs of your thighs, right? We still have all those same elements. It can happen with hands on your shins or your ankles, with your peace fingers wrapped around your big toes. Peace fingers are index finger and middle finger, or your hands may come out to the pinky edge blades of your feet. But choose one that allows you to maintain these elements. So the soles of the feet parallel to the earth. Heels are stacked over the knees or floating over the knees. The arms are gently drawing the knees down toward the earth. If your baby is joyful, if you wanted to rock a little bit from side to side, feel free to do that. All right, so if the vagus nerve is the hack to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and most of us, much of the time, are in sympathetic nervous system activation, how do we use it? So something that we do that activates the vagus nerve, we can think of as vagal toning. So deep breathing is vagal toning. We can manually massage the vagus nerve through parts of our body. So in the ears in particular, the lobes of the ears, the tragus, that flap of flesh that looks like it could close off your ears if you pressed it down. Sides of the neck. But the quickest access point is probably through the breath. There are other things that we can do, of course. Gargling is vagal toning. Singing, chanting are vagal toning. When we make the Om sound, right, energetically, I believe there are other things that are going on there. But if that's too hippy dippy for you, friends, that's okay. You could choose to Om simply because it's vagal toning. So part of this, I think there's a level of discernment that's really important, and we need to have some like measuring sticks, a yardstick in our toolbox that allows us to recognize when we're in sympathetic nervous system activation or chronic sympathetic nervous system activation. Because again, we want some level of sympathetic nervous system activation. We can't get through our day without it, but it needs to be in balance, right? We want both of these divisions of the autonomic nervous system to be in balance. So if you, it might be that you notice your heart beating, or it might be that you get an upset stomach, right? If you've got food in your system, sympathetic nervous system activates, you may end up with an upset stomach or gas or bloating or things like that. For me, one of the cues for me that I'm in chronic SNS activation is my sleep starts to slip away from me. So for all of those things, like those are tools that we need to take some um, responsibility for our own nervous system and start to use some practices. So maybe that's chanting, maybe that's gargling, maybe that's singing. Why does just singing, belting out your favorite song feel so good? Maybe it's good for the soul. I don't know. But I know it tones the vagus nerve. And breathing. And we'll close out our practice today with one breath practice that I think you will find to be impactful on your autonomic nervous system with respect to parasympathetic nervous system activation. All right, friends, lower your feet down to the earth. Lift up, remove your block. Leave the bend in your knees, leave the soles of your feet out to the side. Tee your arms out to the side as well. Shift your hips over to the right, and then drop your knees over to the left. Your gaze, I would ask you to please keep your gaze up toward the ceiling. All right, so the key is balance. Although sympathetic nervous system activation gets really out of control for us really quickly, we desperately need that in our lives as well. When we're sleeping, we're in parasympathetic nervous system activation. In order for us to get out of bed in the morning and to get things going, we need to activate, we need some level of sympathetic nervous system activation. If we're having some kind of a constructive conflict, even if it's a creative, constructive conflict, maybe with a colleague, maybe with a family member, some level of sympathetic nervous system activation will be helpful for us to be at our best during that conversation. Like in adult relationships, for sexual arousal to happen in a consenting adult relationship, we need to have sympathetic nervous system activation. We cannot get aroused without that. But we need parasympathetic nervous system activation. Parasympathetic nervous system activation. We need to be relaxed. So, like you may have noticed, this has come up in my life. You may have noticed it as well, friends. But sexual arousal doesn't come easily when we're really stressed, when we're overstressed, when we're in sympathetic nervous system activation. We need that parasympathetic nervous system. But orgasm cannot happen through parasympathetic nervous system activation. It's got to come through sympathetic. So we need both of these forces in our lives. Right, check in with your body. Notice your current level of sensation. If you're in a 4 to a 6 in this twist, don't change anything. If you want more sensation, get straighten your right leg. Let gravity draw the big toe edge blade of your right foot down toward the earth. Another option is cat pulling its tail, which looks like right hand reaching down, taking a grip on the top of your left foot, then reground your right shoulder, your whole left leg. Continue to let your right knee spill over to your left. What other practice work for you to activate your parasympathetic nervous system? Maybe it's journaling. Um, Another thing I didn't mention that I love that works for me, but a big hug from a loved one, parasympathetic nervous system activation. My girlfriend is kapha dosha. She gives the best hugs, the best, like so grounded, earthy, amazing. And what it does to my nervous system is amazing. So having that in your partner in your life is really important. Making time for that, making that a priority. Watching the sunrise or the sunset, experiencing nature, beautiful landscapes. So time out in nature, whether it's walking or hiking. This morning is sunrise yin from the Sunshine State. I'm visiting my parents in Florida, but being able to see inspiring landscapes is typically activating for the parasympathetic nervous system. All right, friends. If you've straightened that right leg, put a bend back in the knee. If your cat is pulling its tail, release your tail. Shift your knees up to neutral, and then walk your hips over to the left. Drop your knees off to the right. Keep your gaze up toward the stars. All right, friends, check in with your body. If your body wants more sensation, you know the tools. Either straighten that left leg or cat pulling its tail with your right foot in your left hand. So I'll give you time in stillness in this shape as well. but we'll be a little bit pressed with time for both our final resting shape and the breath practice. So let me tell you about the breath practice. So this vagal toning, parasympathetic nervous system activating breath practice, the one that's the best tool in my toolkit for this also is the least technically complex. It's really simple. You'll be able to do it. I'm going to do it from a seated position to demonstrate. You could choose a seated position, but this is going to be a precursor. We're going to go from this down regulating breath directly into the final resting shape. So you could definitely do this laying down as well. And it'll be a 4-8 breath. So we're not beginning this now, friends. I'm just describing it. I'd like you to find a light constriction at the base of your throat when we start. So if you've practiced vinyasa yoga, you'll recognize this as Ujjayi breath. It'll be a 4-count inhale through your nose, followed by an 8-count exhale through your mouth, making a ha sound. So that ha sound, it doesn't have to be vocalized. It doesn't have to be out loud. But find the quality of that sound and just think about maintaining that quality. I should mention for this 4-8 down regulating breath, if you choose to do it laying down, I really recommend laying down on your back. So it could be a reclined butterfly pose, or you could set up your lazy boy recliner with 2 blocks and a bolster under your upper body. But it will be difficult to do this breath if you're on your belly. All right, friends, if you straightened your left leg, put a bend back in the knee. If your cat is pulling its tail, release your tail. Shift your knees back up to neutral. And then make your way into whatever position from which you'll be doing the breath practice, either on your seat or laying down in some way on your back. And we're going to work through 10 rounds of this 4-8 breath. So again, I will cue you the whole time, but it'll be a 4-count inhale through your nose, followed by an 8-count exhale through your mouth, making that ha sound. So let's do a cleansing breath first. So deep, 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 juicy, life-affirming inhale. And then open your mouth, start out with that ha sound again. And inhale through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth, ha, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through your nose, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Eyes are closed. Body is relaxed. Breath is natural. From here, friends, make your way into any final resting shape. It could be the same shape from which you just did this breath, or it could be very, very different. Any position on your seat, your belly, your back, or your side that allows you to balance the two qualities of relaxation and alertness. Swallow 2 or 3 times for vagal toning, and then begin to draw some deeper breaths, feeling for the prana, the life force energy in this breath, bringing your body back to life after this time of rest. And if your body's ready for movement, if it's not ready for movement, stay exactly where you are. You're home. You could close out the practice from exactly where you are. But if your body's ready for movement, start small. Start to reanimate your body with small movements. That might look like wiggling your fingers or your toes. Or maybe something with your neck, maybe gently drawing your chin from shoulder to shoulder. And then if your body wants more movement, I invite you to go bigger at any time. Maybe that looks like rotating your hands at the wrists, your feet at the ankles. Maybe it's taking a full body stretch. And then roll over onto either side, your right or your left side. Take 3 or 4 breaths here.
Check in. Notice how you're feeling. The one thing that I'd ask you to check in and notice today, and again, you don't have to do anything with this information. I just want you to notice, what's the quality of your nervous system now post practice? And press yourself up into any seated position. Stack the joints, float your head over your shoulders, over your hips. You can do anything you like with your eyes, provided that they're soft, open with a soft gaze or gently closed. You can do anything that you like with your hands. Thank you, friends, for moving and breathing with me today. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. And may you know peace. If you're moved to do so, draw your thumbs to the space between your eyebrows. Blessings to you and your family. And that concludes our practice for today. Friends, again, I'm Chris. I'm with Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. This was our Sunrise Yin stress sequence. You're doing amazing. Just keep going.